Hey, everybody. I'm Elysia Buss, host of Horsepower Empowerment Through Connection. And today we have the honor of getting to talk to Nash Mackey, located in Hobart, Tasmania. Did I say that right? Hobart?
You did.
Oh,
Spot on.
fantastic. And so Tasmania is actually part of Australia, in case people didn't actually know that. Tasmania is like the redheaded stepchild of Australia. And Nash has a whole bunch of jokes from when he was in the Army Reserves as a combat medic. So even though I'm an American, I'm still going to say this to you. So thank you for your service to your country, because it's really a big deal. I feel like to be able to be willing to put yourself in that position for your countrymen and women. So
My pleasure. My pleasure. It was my absolute honor. Like, I was so grateful that I was able to join.
yeah, and that's really cool. And so that was actually like a really beautiful stepping stone for you in your career, wasn't it?
It most certainly was. It most certainly was. So I guess I can give you a bit of the backstory as to why I joined the Army. We're talking about children. So I've got 3 children, just before we started. And I come from a family of 11 children. So I've got 5 older.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 older, 5 younger. I'm the middle. 5 brothers, 5 sisters.
Your mother needs like a serious gold star.
Yeah, she needs to take up horse riding or something. I don't know.
I don't know. She's clearly a superhero, like Wonder Woman. We're just gonna send her like a poster of like Wonder Woman. Be like, this
she
is
is an absolute superstar. I tell you what. But yeah, you always hear the joke of they need a TV. They need something like that. They had a TV. But yeah, they absolutely outstanding job. Like, having 3 children, I'm like, how did they do it? And they actually homeschooled us as well.
Wow.
My dad was a teacher, and he'd come home and he'd teach us as well.
Yeah, so he definitely needs like superstar, like superhero status too. Like, that's remarkable. Like I am a teacher. Like, I'm always amazed when people are teachers and also have their own family, because I'm just like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely. Like, I've got full admiration for them both.
Yeah.
But yeah,
but you and children.
Yeah, lots of children. So I grew up in that family, and Mum and Dad just did such an amazing job. But I, as a middle child and with so many kids, I kind of got very to myself, and I sort of, like they say often, the middle child does kind of just blend in, and that's fine. Like, I loved exactly the way everything played out. But at the time, I was in a pretty dark place as a kid. I couldn't really relate. My family was very academic. I wasn't. All those certain things. I was very, like, I could build things. I could create things. I was a creator. My parents didn't really understand that.
Yeah.
So they were trying to get me to do academics, but I just really struggled. It was like really challenging for me. I later found out I had a slight bit of dyslexia, like dyslexic. So that's actually one of the reasons. Now, if I learn things I'm very inspired by and very drawn to, you cannot stop me. And one thing I was drawn to as a child was movie creation. We were speaking about movies earlier.
Yeah.
A little bit for production. That's what drew me in. And so I would get books on that, and I would read and study that every day, all day. I was obsessed with it.
Fascinating.
And so I wanted to kind of be able to tell stories through movie. That was one thing I wanted to do as a child. But my parents didn't understand that. They did not understand it. And I actually had some opportunities come up where people were like, oh, I'll come and film something for you. If you write something, I'll film it, and all these kind of things. But my parents were just so busy that they're like, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. So they kept kind of shutting down my dreams. So I sort of felt quite lonely and unsupported in many ways. And I actually developed this skin condition at one stage. It was like all over my legs and all the way up to almost my belly button. And I never told a soul. I just had this insane skin condition. And it went on for years. And I know this is pretty crazy, but this was the journey I went on.
Yeah.
And that led me to a point where I almost took my own life as a kid. Like, I used to have a lot of suicidal thoughts. I was in a very dark place.
I understand. I'm so sorry.
Long story short, I went to almost take my life one day when we were on a boat or a ship. We were going from Tasmania to Melbourne. And I remember all the family was asleep, and I was awake in one of the toilets, just like tearing at this horrible rash on my legs. And I walked up to the top of the ship, held onto the rail, and it's like, it would be easier. It would be actually more peaceful if I was dead. And that was actually what I was thinking as a kid.
Yeah.
And like, and that was legitimately it. I wasn't sleeping at the time. It was just this vicious cycle that I was in with this rash. And it was debilitating, and I couldn't go to the beach. If my family went to the beach, I'd just sit on the sand because I could not go in the water because it would absolutely destroy me because of the pain, the salt.
Yeah.
Probably would have been the best thing for me, but
in hindsight.
yeah, exactly. But I didn't, so I just went through it. But when I was up there on the ship, I just had this thing this picture come in my mind of my family waking up the next day to me not there.
Yeah.
And that was just what brought me back. But in saying all that, like, I have so much empathy for people who are at that place in their life, because like, I was a good kid. I was trying my best, but things just got on top of me. Like, it all got too much. And then things compound. It's like this rash not being seen, and also, lack of sleep, probably not that good a diet. All these things compound. So I've got so much, I just feel so much for people who are in that dark place.
Yeah.
And then that, I guess, drove me to be very in tune with people, because I could see people when they were, like, I would look at people and I kind of sense the deeper parts of them, like when they were struggling. And even at college, when I got sent to college a year earlier, because mum and dad could sense like this frustration. It was interesting, that rash got cured, like literally after about a week after that happened. I stayed on the ship. I heard my sister-in-law talking to my brother, and she was like, "Oh, here's this crazy rash," talking about my brother. She's like, "I just bought him this cream and I got rid of it." I overheard the conversation. I went and pinched some coins out of my parents' drawer, ran to the shop, bought this cream. In like a week, the rash was gone. After 2 years. It was insane.
Crazy.
It was like this steroid cream.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's some sort of steroid cream.
Yeah. But it was just insane. But it was like, once I made that decision, it's just like things flowed.
Yeah.
Now, if you're in a challenging time, we'll just start with this. If you're in a challenging time, always just give yourself permission just to turn the next page. Like, just turn the next page, because things do get better, and things are meant to get better. Like, I really believe that now. And I've seen that play up in all my clients' lives who are really struggling. Like, if they just hang in there, they just compose themselves, and they just do the best they can, things always open up. Things always get better. And they definitely did for me. So, I went to college. I got sent there a year early, and because my parents could just sense how frustrated I was at home. I just wanted to get out in the world. And I did that. And so I hit the ground. As soon as I was out of college, I was like, bang, what can I do? I want to live.
Yeah.
And so bit of a struggle at college, because being homeschooled and not really knowing anyone, I had to kind of fit in. I had to learn how to fit in. The way I learned to fit in was lifting heavy stuff. That was pretty much my thing. I could lift heavy stuff. And so people liked me for that. So I used to just lift weights, and I became a gym supervisor.
Interesting.
And so that was sort of my identity for many years. It was this bodybuilder, weightlifter
Nash,
guy.
how tall are you?
I'm not even 6 foot. Yeah.
No, I was just curious, just to help people with visualizing that whole process.
Yeah. So I'm probably like a fairly good build for a bodybuilder, because if you're too tall, it can be challenging. Although Arnold proved that wrong.
How tall is he?
But I think he's really tall. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm fairly certain he's. I don't know. I could be wrong there.
I think The Rock is taller.
The Rock he's a giant.
Yeah, that guy is like a beast. That guy's so cool.
Yeah. So that kind of proves that theory wrong. Of Looking, I think it's easier to bulk up. Yeah, when you're smaller, because it's like.
Yeah, there's less
that's
mass,
what I've heard.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean.
Yeah. So that's kind of the path I went down. That was kind of an identity I took on. And that led me to have a real flair for the kind of body and that side of things. So all these things started compounding, like having experience, like being in a bit of pain as a kid, also wanting to understand the body and understand humans. And in the gym, what I found I loved was I was always fascinated to help people. Like, I'd love just helping people when they came in. I wouldn't just help them in the gym. I'd actually want to talk to them. And I even went to one of the counselors at school when I was there, and I was like, is there some way I can sit down and just talk with the kids? Is there some role I can do where I just sit and talk with the kids. He's like, no, that's my job. He's like, you just focus on being a student. He just looked at me like I was so weird, but it was just like, I genuinely wanted to be there. And if I saw kids crying, I'd just always be the person who went and sat with them.
Aww.
That's who I was, because I just cared.
It's a really empathetic person. Very compassionate.
Yeah. Or if I saw someone who was like a thug at school, I'd find a way to kind of like move toward them and actually have a conversation with them, and like sort of just take down that layer that people had. Yeah. So that was sort of my unique thing as a kid, I guess, coming from not being in mainstream school. I came in as an outsider, so I could I didn't really take people too seriously.
Yeah.
And so all this drive sort of compounded and drove me to join the military when I was 17. And because my older brother was in the military, and I was like, wow, what can I do that's exciting now that I'm out in this big world? And I was like, oh, join the military.
So you guys can join at 17 or?
Yeah, 17.
So here it's 18. So that's why I was just asking. Yeah,
but you need parents need to sign, that's something legitimate and all that. My dad wasn't overly keen on the idea, but I insisted. And I was obsessed. Yeah, I persevered. And so I got in the military, trained as a combat medic, and that led me to work in hospitals, because we had to obviously train in real circumstances.
Yeah.
And I got to see some pretty big things in that hospital, like at a very young age. I got to see young people who had, literally on death's doorstep. And it really was eye-opening to me, because I was like, wow, this could have been me. This was me. Not so long ago. Oh, no, actually it was probably, I was about 12 when I had those really dark thoughts.
Dark thoughts, yeah.
But yeah, I just knew, I was like, wow, that could have been me. That could have been me. And that drove me to want to do something over and above even just being in the medical field, because I was like, I knew that we were treating end result, we were treating the result of what had happened in their life.
Right.
I wanted to be there early on. I wanted to intervene. And as well as working in hospitals and operating theatres for over 2 years, I also worked with an ambulance transport service, where I'd sit in the back with elderly patients who were literally on some of their last journey. Quite often it was their last journey in life, like to the home where they might die, or the nursing home. And I would hold these people's hands and look in their eyes and just talk to them. Some of them just wouldn't talk at all, because they were just like very, different things going on. But some of them you'd meet two types of people at least. You'd hear people who had lived an amazing life, and they would just share from the heart, and they'd be like still lit up by everything, even though they might have like crazy like things happening in their body, they'd still be lit up. And then you'd hear people who were angry and resentful and full of regret. And it was amazing. At such a young age, I got connected with that, and I was like, what kind of person do I want to be? And I invite, anyone listening to this just to consider that, like, what sort of person do you want to be at the end of your life? Like when you're looking back, because ultimately it's a choice. Like it begins today, like stepping into what you want to do, what you want to create, and that life that you most want to live. That's the opportunity we all have. So long story short, I know I've gone on a bit, but I just wanted to fill in like why I do what I do, why I'm so passionate about what I do. Like, it's not just, I want to go and do a life coaching course. I want to go and become another coach. It's been like a lifelong unfolding for me. And what I do now is the ultimate impact I feel like I can make on the earth, through supporting the people in the way I do.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Nash. That's
all
really
good,
cool.
All good.
Oh, that's great. I love it when we get to go deep with things and get like really specific and also broad. That's beautiful. Yeah. So you're a performance coach. That's like your title as a coach, and that you help people to like basically live like a purpose-filled, like fulfilling life. Mm-hmm. So what kind of people do you usually pull in, like populations, and what do you notice that people struggle with the most that comes?
It's a great question. So I've hired a business coach recently to help me take my business to the next level, but it's been a struggle for him as well, because he's like, what's your niche? What's your niche? And we looked at all of my past clients, and it's such an interesting dynamic that we've had so far. So I just started putting myself out there, just like you've been doing. with your amazing content, and just
Thank you.
You'll see certain people are drawn to you. And now I can't pinpoint exactly who I work with, because sometimes it's a, 60-year-old man or woman. Sometimes it's a young person, 18 years old. Sometimes it's, everything in between, male, female, it doesn't matter. People are just drawn to my work in different ways.
Makes sense to me, given what you just said.
Yeah. So I'm really blessed to say that I get to support people. Now, I don't pretend like I've got all the answers by any means, but I would be an idiot to say I don't have some tools that can enhance the quality of people's lives. And I've gone very, very deep into the work I've done. I've not just skimmed the surface. I've not just learned from one mentor. I've learned from multiple. I've not just done one course. I've done multiple for the past 7 years, just to really understand what people can do to take control of their lives, what people can do to actually live a meaningful life, because I've got that reference in my brain of what lies in store for people who are unfulfilled, like what the consequences can actually be, how heavy life can be when you don't have something to live for. I know the reality of that stuff. And a lot of people are walking around. One of my mentors, his name was Preston Smiles. And
Preston Smiles. I've heard great things about Preston
Smiles.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. He always says that so many people are walking around committing a slow suicide.
It's really true.
Yeah, they wouldn't go and do it. Like, they wouldn't actually go and take their life, but they would continue to spoon feed themselves like this toxic food or these drinks, all this stuff that
toxic
humans
people
do. Toxic people, all of this stuff, toxic thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And they never actually realize what they're doing. Underneath all these little acts is actually a certain respect or belief about themselves that they don't think they're worthy of actually having anything over and above what they currently have.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I answered your question at all there, but essentially I support people in many different fields, because it's all relevant to, where they are. And I guess the work I do with people, it can impact you, whether you're an elite athlete, like I work with some high level athletes as well. The one common theme, I will say this, the one common theme every one of my clients have had is they are a creative. They're all creative people, like, be it entrepreneurs, like ballerinas, or there's some athletes as well. I don't know if you class them as creatives, but for the vast
Did you say
majority,
ballerinas?
Yeah, ballerina.
Ballerinas are absolutely athletes.
Yeah, they're definitely. But I was referring to. I'm also working with a lady who's an elite level cyclist as well.
I'm giving you a hard time, Nash, but like, but a little bit honestly,
Ballets,
though, like athletes. No, because like some people look at ballerinas and they don't understand the rigor the ballerinas go through, and they just don't think of them as athletes. And so sometimes I'm just like, for those of you out there that actually don't think the ballerinas are athletes, let me just like be clear.
I would 1,000% agree with that. They are I could not do what they do. Like, it is insane.
Yeah.
Like the young lady I was working with, she's literally training 7 days a week, like just in the studio. Like,
it's
relentless.
It's crazy what they do. I remember, so one of my first jobs, just a little non sequitur really quick. So one of my first jobs, I worked at a top end dessert shop, but one of my bosses used to dance ballet for the Pacific Northwest Ballet, which is located in Seattle, Washington.
Wow.
And she was talking to football players like Seattle Seahawks, and they were giving them a hard time. So they had the Seattle Seahawks come to their studio. And if I'm remembering this story correctly, from, like 1996 or something, and they had them come to the studio and be like, come do our routine. You think that like ballet is super easy? Like, and the football players were just like dying.
I would believe it. Yeah.
Same routine that the ballet dancers did for their
That is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ballet, athletes. But I also create classes very creative. Like, this is just me kind of generalizing. Like, when I look at them, I'd say they're all creatives to some degree. Like, they've all got something and the interesting thing is, like, even if they are athletes, sometimes they've got actual creative, like, for example, the lady who's a cyclist I'm working with, she's an incredible athlete within her cycling, but then she's got this creative flair toward painting and art. So it's just like a theme that I've seen, with everyone I've supported. They all want to create something above and beyond where they are. And for some reason, they've got a limitation. They're like, I can't really step into that. or that would actually go against the identity I've created for myself, or what would other people think of me if I did that? So the work we do is actually helping them step into that in a healthy way, and actually do it in a way where they release judgment of other people, and they actually give themselves permission to do the thing that inspires them and lights them up the most. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean stop doing what they're currently doing, which some people think they need to do, which is a huge thing. And that's why a lot of people come to me, is because they're like, I've got this dream, but I do this and I need to support my family, and I've got all these responsibilities to take care of. They're like, how do I navigate this? How do I live that perfect life? Well, sometimes it's not necessarily about jumping ship straight away. It's actually about putting things in place and leveraging what you have right now as a vehicle to fund and fuel the dream that you most want to do. So they're just interesting conversations to always have with people. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question as well.
No, that was beautiful. So what you really do is that you help people stop having limiting beliefs, and you allow them to really discover who their authentic self is by bringing all of it into alignment. Because when you bring everything into alignment of who you actually are, then it flows across the dynamics, which allows you to continue to, have this one image over here, help your family, live like your purpose, foster that creative nature, right? Because a person is dynamic. You don't have to be just one thing.
True.
True.
And the interesting thing is, if we can go there, is that, so for example, athletes, sometimes they feel that if they step into that other identity, they won't bring the same energy into the work that they need to do, because they need a high level of energy. And it's like, how do you do that in a way where you still bring that fire to whatever you need to do, like to perform? How do you still bring that energy, but allow yourself to have this creative, flowy side as well? So that's a really interesting thing. And another thing I've noticed is with high performers, often they are very driven from a place of needing to prove, or needing to either prove to themselves or to other people that they're good enough. And so when you remove that driving force, how do they still stay driven? And so this is the interesting conversation to always have with people. And they know it. They're like, I've got this, but how do I let go of this? Because it's literally got me to where I am. And so I was like, okay, well, how do we replace this? How do we put something in there that's actually a healthy fuel to actually not only keep you doing what you're doing, it actually gets you further? So that's always a very interesting conversation to have with people as well.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me a lot of how I try to describe things to my 6-year-old niece sometimes, because kids are beautiful. I love children so much, and everything in life is like wonder, right? Because they haven't experienced a lot of things before, and they're still trying to navigate and figure out, like, what are we supposed to do, and when and where and why? No, I want to do this. Like, why do I have to do this thing over here, right? And like, not about malice at all, just like not understanding. And so when I hear things like what you just described, I think about how we have different cultural norms. When we go to the library, we're supposed to be quiet. When we go to a sports game, we're supposed to be really loud. When we go to like church, for people that go to church, you're in a space of reverence and listening. When you go to school, you're supposed to be engaging and thinking critically. When you're with your friends at a bar, you get to be raucous as you want, or, have a deep philosophical, or whatever. And each person that you present in those different spaces is no more or less a part of your authentic self if you are present in each of those moments. And so you access that piece of yourself that allows you to be fully present in each one of those moments without it invalidating another part of yourself that allows you to be the right person within that other container.
Yes, that's so true. I like that.
Thanks.
Amazing.
And because I can absolutely see where your clients are coming from, and like that it makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. But I guess especially in this world where it is like we are seeing all these new possibilities. Like you can jump on social media and you see this person doing this particular thing, and then someone else doing another thing. So we have a lot of information, like, and a lot of possibility at our fingertips. We could just go and jump online and do this course, or learn about this, or do this. And there's so many options that it often distracts people.
Oh yes.
And so that's another huge part as well. And that's
where
it is easy to do, it really is. But it will literally, you can spin your wheels for years and not
oh
get
my
anywhere.
gosh. Yes.
Yeah. But so it's important for people to actually ground themselves in, number one, who they really are. And that's a kind of a broad idea. Like, to say, I don't necessarily ever get to that. We never come to some concrete conclusion. Oh, this is exactly who you are. Like, the best of our abilities, we tap into it and be like, okay, this feels right to me. This is what I believe will light me up. This energizes me. And we kind of measure it off that. And they believe, like, if people can see it, will also make a difference in the quality of other people's lives, because that's really important as well. Not just about what lights you up. Will it impact other people's lives in a beneficial way? Because
absolutely, that
will be one of the key drivers to keep you going. When on the days you don't want to do it for yourself, if you know other people are benefiting, you'll get up, you'll do it.
It's true.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. This is so much to get to unpack, and it's fun. And we were talking about earlier about living through that authentic self and being present, and how so many people over the course of time have created walls within themselves to try and keep themselves safe. And oftentimes that works within the limiting belief system and whatnot, and having experienced trauma or invalidation, or how we've adapted to our environment to try and be understood or liked or whatever, all of which is a natural process in life and is not to be invalidated as a process, but to be able to recognize that we should grow and evolve, and to slowly to find people that we can feel safe with, either coaches or friends or counselors or whatnot, to provide that container that we can slowly begin to peel back the layers and let the walls go down in a way, so that we can actually start to rediscover who that authentic self is. Because sometimes people ask you like who are you, and you're just like, is this what they want to hear? And you tell them what they think that you want to hear to fit in, but you're just like, but is that really true? And that's where I think that phrase, like, get out of your own way, sometimes comes from.
Yeah. And that can be an interesting journey, getting out of your own way, because there's, especially if you've practiced being a certain way for so long, it has become an identity, and it goes deeper than just, obviously, like, it's a great phrase, and it makes so much sense to you and I, but for people who are legitimately tripping over themselves because there's so much in their own way, like, it can be a process. And so, like, grounding that in actual, like, practical actions that people can begin doing is always an interesting process, especially when people have no sort of awareness of all the work that I guess we've been exposed to.
Yeah. And get to continue to be exposed as we as individuals continue to evolve.
That's
so we
it.
can better
Exactly.
serve ourselves and others.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But for people who don't even have anything to do with that, it's like, okay, well, how do we begin this process? How do we actually tap into something new?
Yeah.
And I work, it's really been interesting, because sometimes I'm working with someone who's a truck driver, or someone who's just like, and it's like, okay, well, how do we tap into these things? And I love that challenge of actually finding what lights them up, finding their spark.
Absolutely.
And we've all got it. The beautiful thing is we've all got something within us that we can tap into and actually fuel, that can begin to just, I don't know, create this beautiful energy. The more you pour into it, and it can just begin to flow. Like, we've all got it. I don't care who you are. You've all got something inside of you that you can tap into, and then you can fuel it, and let that really infiltrate your life. Like, that's the opportunity we all have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
What would you say is one of the key things that you work on? I mean, there are lots of things that you do with people to empower them, but what's one of the things that you feel like you regularly key into to help people?
Habits and beliefs.
Habits and beliefs. That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And again, I come from the military background. I love habits. I know the power of routines and rituals. And I always say to people, you march in the place we go to training to become a soldier. And in Australia is called Kapuka. You walk into Kapuka. Yeah, it is a cool name. You walk into Kapuka a certain way. You walk into a Kapuka a scared, in my case, I was a young man, and you march out a soldier. And you're like, how do they do that? How do they do that? And you look at it very carefully, and there's obviously a huge amount of challenge.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of challenge. There's also a huge amount of support that goes along with that challenge. There's also a very specific environment that's designed to help you become a soldier. There's particular routines you need to run every single day that help you kind of really identify as this new person. You know, everything down to making your bed. So they'll measure your bed. They'll measure your handkerchiefs when you fold and iron your handkerchiefs. Your socks need to be folded a particular, like every little part. Your brass needs to be meticulously polished. And then you've got your weapons. Your weapons need to be absolutely on point, like perfectly clean. And then all the responsibility that comes with carrying a loaded weapon, like all this stuff that they put you through that allows you to march out the other side as a soldier. And it's like, okay, well, how do you, and that's been a real focus of mine. It's like, how do I recreate that environment for people through my work? Like they walk in one way, they march out another way.
Yeah.
So I'm very mindful of the environment I create and the support I offer, but also the challenge. And it's also the intention of what people want to get out. Like, who do you want to march out as?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that people come to me with. They're like, okay, I have this problem. And often, so often people are focused on the problem or challenge. I prefer to use the word challenge. But it's like, okay, what's the outcome here? What are you actually going for in life? Because sure, we can just keep focusing on solving challenge after challenge after challenge. But what do you actually want to do with your life?
Yeah.
What is it? Like, what's the big picture? And so often people who have these challenges just show up again and again and again and again and just like crushing them down. It's because they're not going anywhere. They can't see any point of overcoming the challenge.
Yeah.
So you need to know what's the destination? What are we doing this for in the first place? You know,
Yeah.
What do you want to be? What do you want to experience? Who do you want to impact? What's the difference you want to make? Yeah. Yeah. And so once we know that bigger picture, we then say, okay, well, who are you right now? And we get very clear on that. Okay, well, who you are right now is producing particular results. Who would you have to be to produce those new results? What would you need to do? What would your days need to look like? What kind of energy level, like fitness levels would you need? We go into all dimensions of life. And then based on that vision that we create, we then very systematically help them structure their days so they begin building habits that are in line with that kind of person. Because I'm not interested in just sharing ideas. I want to actually give people habits. So it becomes like again, with the soldier training, it becomes your automatic way of being. It's who you are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So how many days does it take to build a habit and how many days does it take to break it? Just as a reminder to everybody out there.
Well, yeah. And there's been lots of different studies on this, but essentially 66 days is kind of like a base, like 66 days. I usually work for people with 90 days just to push that out. So that's a really good rule of thumb. About 90 days, I would say commit to anything for 90 days. People used to say 21 days. That kind of got pushed aside. About 66 days minimum.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so often people, when they come to developing habits, they're like, oh, I don't really want to do anything else. My schedule's packed. How could I do something else? And it's not so much about what you need to do as much as it is sometimes what you need to stop doing. That is so often the case for people. Like they're doing too much of the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
I always say do less, do it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minimize things. Live a minimalistic life. It's so hard for somebody.
Yes.
In a world full of instant gratification and so many shiny things.
Yes, absolutely. It is.
Mentally shiny and physically shiny.
Yes, exactly. I get it.
And then for the portion of when somebody breaks routine, like if it just happens one time within those 66 days, and I imagine this is different for different people, but what have you seen in that regard?
As far as habits I've been able to build, or
when they break it. So you're trying to have a habit for 66 days and then you're like, oh, today I wasn't able to do it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So this is a great question. And because especially if say, for example, you're developing a habit of waking up early, like that's your goal, but you've got a child or a baby who's waking up 5 times in the night, which I currently have. You know, like she's teething and all the other good stuff that goes along with it. And so like I wake up, my ideal wake up time in the morning now is 3:45 a.m. That's my time. That's my peak time, and I love it. But sometimes, because of our little one, I can't do that because she wakes us up so much, and sleep's very important. So I'm very mindful of, when I work with people, their circumstances have to kind of allow for them to develop the habit in a healthy way. And so I'm not too rigid, as in, like, if they miss a day, it's fine. We just get back up and just keep doing it the next day. We get back up. And it's not just the doing, it's actually, because if they're just trying to like do the actions with the same brain and the same beliefs, then eventually they won't sustain the actions. It's not enough.
Yeah.
So there's multiple ways you actually need to, as we're building the habit, they're not just taking the actions. I'm also working on their beliefs. I'm also helping them upgrade their identity so they believe it's who they are.
Yeah.
You know, this is, and what they used to do becomes so foreign to them. They're like, why did I do that? And that is literally exactly. And that's what happens. Like, just last Christmas, I had a gentleman. He hadn't had an alcohol-free Christmas, and he used to drink heavily. He hadn't had an alcohol-free Christmas in over 30 years. This Christmas, he completely alcohol-free. He woke up the next day fresh, went to the gym, had an amazing day. Now he's like completely reduced alcohol in his life. Literally had a DJ who I worked with recently. Obviously she's in environments that just are all about alcohol. Like she's beside the bar and they're just like pushing her drinks. That's what would always happen, but she hated it. And so I worked with her, and she was completely able to release that. Now she cannot touch alcohol. She actually feels a stomach churn if she sees alcohol.
Interesting.
And that's what can happen when you actually work on the beliefs and stack up new references around the benefits of doing something new and the drawbacks of what you used to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I work with people. And even like a music producer who I've worked with recently, he had a very severe marijuana addiction because he believed he needed marijuana to be creative. That was his story. Cannot touch it now. We worked together, and he actually went and had an opportunity where he pretty much had like half a joint essentially. And he could not, because he was in this environment like quite a while after we worked, he had it. And he was like almost vomiting. He was like, just could not do it.
Fascinating.
And he called me straight away. He's like, you wouldn't believe I touched it. He said, but I cannot do it. I cannot do it. So it's quite amazing. So he even had the opportunity to do it, but he just can't do it. And that's the beauty about the brain. When it really gets something, and when you can actually stack up references and begin seeing how taking your action will serve your greatest good, and you get that on a cellular level, you've got your whole physiology working in your favor as well. It's not just you trying to create a new future just out of the conscious mind. You actually get it into the subconscious, and it becomes an identity.
Yeah, that's brilliant stuff. I find really interesting is I talked to another coach. He's an addiction coach in Brisbane. And what I find interesting here is I've talked to 2 of you now in Australia who say it's a marijuana addiction. And in America, I don't think I've ever run across somebody that calls it an addiction to marijuana. They're just like, oh no, like this is just like a thing. Like people talk about being addicted to cigarettes and being addicted to alcohol, but you just don't hear like marijuana just somehow like it gets a free pass.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like you could talk to addicts as like for cocaine or heroin or whatever, but it's so socially acceptable as a coping mechanism or whatever else people want to call it. Yeah, it's just really fascinating to me, especially since I'm so severely allergic to marijuana. Like there's so much that I don't get to do in society living in Washington State where it's so prevalent. That it's just fascinating. It's fascinating for my brain. I feel like
that is very interesting.
That hear us talking about a marijuana addiction, like they might just like stop watching. Like right now, they're just gonna be like, nope, and that's gonna be.
Yep. I will. Can't please everyone.
Right, which is fine. It's just really fascinating to me because some people, their viewpoints are so strong that like once you ridge up against a viewpoint, that they just shut down completely. And it's not just
Yeah.
about the marijuana addiction. I'm talking about like viewpoints in general, because we have a lot of strong viewpoints going on politically right now in America. I'm sure you have your own in Australia and like in Tassie.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah, but and the thing is, like, I never come to people and be like, "Tell me about your life," and they tell me about a particular habit. I'm like, "Oh, you should stop that." That's not like if marijuana is their elixir and that's like their thing, I'm going to be like, "Okay, cool, that's your thing." If it's damaging their life, if it's putting them in a dangerous place where they're actually harming themselves as a consequence of having that, and actually it's destroying a part of their life, I'll be the first to say, we need to look at this. And I'll know very quickly when I have a conversation with people, if there's a particular habit that they do that's continually playing out and it's leading to or keeping them in an identity, I'll be able to pick up on that very quickly, and I'll suggest to them if they haven't suggested already, because most often people know. Most often people come to me and they're like, okay, I've got this habit and I really don't feel like this is serving my greater good. Or when we talk about their vision, I'm like, what parts of your life do you feel would need to change right now? What current behaviors, what thought patterns do you think would need to change? What would you need to believe about yourself? Who would you need to show up as? And then they'll just list out, they're like, this, and this. This needs to go. I know this is no good for me. I know it. It's something inside just makes me feel yuck, you know?
and there's a great clarification. And there's a big difference between people who want to smoke marijuana every once in a while, or like whatever that once in a while means to them, or somebody that wants to like have a drink now and again, like socially, versus somebody that it's like, it's a problem and they make poor choices. Like if somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm going to drink and then I'm going to get in my car and drive, like that's a poor life choice. Or smoke weed and get in a vehicle and drive when they're, you know, like because they're in an altered state. And that therein lies the difference of whether or not it's something that's fun and relaxing and okay, or something that's like detrimental to you and potentially other people.
Yeah, and I'm not the person to say whether or not it's good, bad, or okay. Like I don't know. I'm not the person to make that call. I've never smoked. I wouldn't know the benefits of it. But
there are benefits to smoking weed. Some people, you know, the Italians say what, like a glass of red wine a day, like keeps the doctor away, right? You know?
Of course, absolutely. And I went through a period between being in the military and also moving in running a construction business for a bunch of years. I was very much in that scene of alcohol. This was after I worked in hospitals. After I worked in hospitals, I was really determined to do something great with my life. And I wanted to just live a good life because I saw all these people and I wanted to help them. But my first port of call was like, how do I just live a good life?
Yeah.
Because I don't like these people. So I looked around at all the people around me who were happy. The happiest person I knew was my cousin. He was a builder. So I was like, I'll go and become a builder. And before I started building, I literally couldn't cut 2 bits of wood. I couldn't cut a mitre, which is like 45 degrees. I couldn't do it with a handsaw. And I remember I was like the last person to become a carpenter. But
Your cousin's like, are you sure this is a good idea?
Yeah, that's right. Well, as a kid, I used to build stuff, but after working in hospitals, I just lost that skill. But I learned it and I became a carpenter very quickly. And then I began running my own construction business, which I did for a bunch of years. But I was doing that because I thought it would equal happiness because I saw him being happy doing it. So I was chasing someone else's definition of happiness, which was a huge thing because I didn't know, because I came out of the hospitals. I wanted to live a good life and I looked at happy people. I was like, I'll go and do what he did. But I still had that thing inside of me because I'd seen all that stuff in hospitals. I couldn't let that sleep. And so I tried to just fit into the building industry and all this identity that goes along with it, drinking very heavily, which I did. I was very good at it.
Good to know what you're good at in life.
I was almost professional. It was good. It was good. I went all in. And my wife just used to buy me like big slabs of beer. Like that was just like a gift. I'd just come home and Cassie would have bought me big slab of beer. And I used to drink about 12 beers a night, which is about
damn.
I don't know.
That is an impressive amount of drinking.
Yeah, I was really into it. I went all in. And it became so normal. It became so easy. You start off with like 2, 3, and you just drink them like water. It was nothing. Wow. And I got really concerned. I actually slipped into a really bad depression eventually because I kind of had these realizations. Like I'd done all this stuff early on in my life, and then I'd slipped back into this lifestyle. And I remembered all those people I'd seen, and I remembered my past, and I was like, something's out of a, and this had all these bits of me that just felt like I was just being pulled in so many directions. I didn't feel like I was anyone. I just felt like I was trying to be someone.
Yeah.
And I slipped into a really bad depression, and I kind of realized that I wouldn't be able to keep my relationship up with Cassie if I kept in the way I was. Like I knew that. I knew I couldn't sustain it. I just knew I would sabotage it because I was like overeating, over drinking, addicted to video games. Like I was in a really kind of crappy place. And it was around when our son was born, about 7 years ago almost. And yeah, that's when I saw him looking up to me. I saw him wanting, like, mirroring the things I did, like on a really high level. I often tell people I was doing squats in the lounge room one day, like just free squats. And he comes up with the bottle hanging out of his mouth, biting it with his teeth, with his nappy on still. And he starts like doing squats and copying me. And then that night I was having some beers as well. And then he went and picked up the beers out of the recycling bin after I'd finished them. And he went up to mum to put some water in. He was like walking around the house with me. And I was like, whoa, he's copying me either way. He's copying me like with the exercise, he's copying me with the drinking. I was like, what sort of example do I want to set for him? And it was a real awakening for me. I was like, wow, that's eye-opening. He's copying me. And do I want to give him this thing of just like, drinking is normal, it's just what I do? It's like, where did we pick that up? When did I decide that was normal for me?
Yeah.
And so like, I don't drink alcohol at all now. I drink none. Simply because it's just not good for me. I know for myself, it does not feel right for myself. It makes me, it goes against my identity. Not because I believe I'm better than anyone else, just because I tell the truth, I love the taste of beer. I love the taste of good alcohol, but it goes against what I know is best for me. I know it, I feel it in my body. And it used to put me into a depression, and it's just not worth it. It's just not worth having in my life.
I understand.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm still trying to get to that point with sugar. I haven't quite been strong enough inside myself. I go for a while, but it's really interesting. Like, it sounds like I'd be joking, but when I eat sugar, it's far more difficult for me to emotionally regulate. It's just like go into depression way easier, more reactive. When challenges come up, I'm like more tired.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like when you get really busy, it's easy to eat something that's high in sugar to just give you like that quick energy rush and then just keep going. Yeah. And I'm like, well, it's not a drug, but it is a drug because it's sugar and it's like altering your state, which I feel like that's what like drugs do. They alter your state. And so just because it's sugar doesn't. But when you think about other things that process better, like stevia, which doesn't raise your glycemic index. Maple syrup isn't as bad, I found, for me at least. But like, man, refined sugar, brown sugar or white sugar, it just. But ice cream is so good.
Ice cream's so good. Yeah,
it's so good. Sometimes, hot days, you just want some ice cream. So it's about reducing how much you have of something. And so in Nash's case, it was all of it. So I think I feel like, are you getting close to time, my friend? Do you need to go soon?
I know we're doing well.
I just wanted to check and be respectful of the time that we have.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. I try to read that nonverbal communication sometimes and be like, well, what's he doing? He's looking at something. Is it a clock? I know we've been talking for a while.
No, that's all good. I've got these because I kind of got notifications turned off, but they're sort of popping up now because it's like, yeah, that's fine. It's all good.
The world is like, we want to talk to you. You're doing cool things.
All good.
Speaking of all the cool things you're doing, share with us your big dream.
Well, this is a great question. I've been on 6 podcasts this year. I'm very, very lucky. No one's asked me this. So it's good. So my dream is, like, I really want to make the work I do and the mindset side of things and also the self-awareness side of things just more mainstream. Because when I stepped into it, it was very left of field, and people sort of looked at it like, you used to be a carpenter, you used to be a builder. Why are you doing this stuff? Why are you meditating now? And it was and I feel like it is becoming a little more mainstream. But I want to do that on a higher level. I actually want to also, I'm writing my first book right now. I love writing.
Congratulations.
In stories. I love writing in stories. So that's actually been a process for over 4 years I've been writing this book, and it's been a beautiful journey because I've been writing this through some really, really challenging times. Not a lot of people know this about me and my family, but almost 4 years ago now, we moved interstate, and it was our dream. We dreamed to move to Queensland from Tasmania. So we moved, and it was incredible. And I sold all my carpentry tools and everything and just moved over there, really hoping to launch my business that I currently do. And some clients who owed me money in Tasmania didn't pay. And so we got to Queensland, into our dream location. And number one, my partner's parents had chosen the house for us, and they didn't realize that the house was actually in a location that was kind of like the highest crime rate in that part of Queensland.
Oh no.
Yeah. So we moved into this very, very crazy neighborhood. It was a nice house and everything, but there were literally people next to us having their back doors kicked in by like gangs, and there's all sorts of things happening in this neighborhood. But we moved into this situation. So this was like our dream move, and we got there, and then we didn't have any money. We're in this neighborhood that was crazy. And so we had to pretty much build up from ground, like rock bottom again. We got to this place and we had no way of kind of just functioning. I got to a point where I was so desperate one day, I actually went to a car park and I was looking for coins on the ground to buy some noodles to feed my family. Just some 99-cent noodles. That was about 4 years ago that happened, while I was waiting for money to come through. And I was and we had to go to like community centers to get bread. And it was just a crazy time. This was supposed to be our dream.
Right.
But that gave us such a lot of experiences. And I had to find ways to earn money. So I just went and like spoke to people, and I communicated, and I ended up getting this really great marketing job for a company. And so we built back up really quickly. But in saying that, the dream, I'm sort of going a little bit on a tangent here, but the dream was that, you know, we moved to this place, and we expected it to be a perfect way. It was nothing like we anticipated. So, but it was better. It was better than we could have ever imagined. It gave us so much more. So in that time though, in that really low spot, I got to see the power of community centers and these places that support people on those levels. Because we were, you know, a good family. We were doing our best. I've always been an extremely hard worker, but we found ourselves in this position. I know we're not the only one. There's so many families out there like that, and good people
who
just don't have access. Yeah, who just don't have access to, you know, sometimes the resources that you and I might have access to. So one of the key parts I want to do as part of my vision is to build centers. I want to put a center in every state of Australia that actually supports people. I want to actually be able to finance coaches to be in there, just people who can just go and hold space for anyone who needs. Probably not so much like mainstream mental health advice, because I understand and respect the place that role it plays, but like something that offers a little more holistic guidance and direction for people. And not just your kind of average community centers. I want to know, I'm very particular about buildings. Being a carpenter, I want these very meticulous, very beautiful, and very enriching, so people can just go in and like just fuel themselves and actually connect. Like, if no one came to me when I was a kid, Elysia, I don't know about you, but no one came to me when I was a kid and said, "What's your dream? What do you want to do with your life?"
Yeah.
No one ever did that for me. Did they do that for you?
Well, it was really interesting. So when I was growing up, it was kind of like, what do you want to do? But then when I was like, oh, I want to work with horses, and I wanted to be a photographer and writer for National Geographic and travel the world and connect cultures so that people could expand their consciousness while holding on to their authentic self. And as like, obviously as a kid, I used slightly different terms, but that was really where I was just so passionate, connecting with like Indigenous cultures and whatnot, especially. And they're just like, you can never make money as horses. You can't make money doing photography. Like, all these things are expensive. And so it was just that same sort of thing. Like, just like it was interesting because being in a loving household, but at the same time, like being like, no, you can't do that. Like, you should be a teacher. You're always like trying to help people, but no, you can't work with horses. And I'm just like, which is so funny in hindsight because teaching doesn't really pay a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's interesting. And I've actually been homeless like 3 times in my life and dug myself out from the bottom. And yeah, and so not necessarily like sleeping on the ground, but like having slept in my truck a couple different times, like when I was younger. And people look at homelessness in a lot of different ways. And I remember there was this one time on September 11th, not the September 11th, but an event that was held in the honor of September 11th in Seattle, in one of the like the CenturyLink, it's like a football stadium basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there to volunteer as a massage therapist for seated chair massage to the homeless people. And it was one of the most impactful moments of my life, to hear how many people slept on the streets, like kids alike. And this woman, the governor of the state, had a glass container and a bunch of marbles. And so she poured the amount of people like represented in these marbles into this glass container for the number of people that were on the streets. And as the marbles hit the glass, it echoed throughout the building, and it just kept going and going and going. And it still makes me like almost cry because it was just like, wow, like the realization. And I know that the homeless population has skyrocketed since I was at that event more than, gosh, I'd say it's almost 15 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And to lay hands on these people whose bodies were so dehydrated and their muscles so tight from being laying on the streets and being under so much stress, and the way they would just melt under your hands just to have a human being touch them in kindness and respect was just it was just really incredible. Like I'm just like
Yeah, I can see that. Wow,
yeah.
that's beautiful. That is so wow. What amazing work. Good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I
What a
felt so
gift.
honored to be there, to get to be part of that experience for those people in that moment. Like, yeah.
What a gift. That is amazing. Good
Yeah.
for you.
So yeah, I understand. So when you tell your stories,
you
I'm
do.
like, yeah, I get it.
You get it. You do get it. I sense that. And so, yeah, that's what I really want to do. Like, that's the bigger part of the work I'm doing. But I want people to know how powerful they are as well. Like, that's a huge part of everything I do. I just want people to know how powerful they are and what they can actually do to begin taking control of their life, because I know that people are left feeling helpless.
Yeah, a lot
for
of
the
the
most
time.
part. And society is so quick to diagnose people and say, you've got this wrong with you, or you're this. And people putting people in little boxes, and people carry that, and they're like, yeah, I'm this.
Yeah, or just judging people because of circumstance that they can't necessarily even control, or you just never know somebody's story for positive or negative and like what they're dealing with any given day, which is why I think it's so important for us to just like authentically smile and like look people in the eyes and be like, I see you. Even just people walking down the street, because you never know what that smile will change in being just seen in a person's life. Like you could save someone's life just by seeing them and sending that kind and loving energy towards them with nothing in expectation of return.
It's beautiful. I love that. It's a good way to live.
Yeah, exactly. I love your dream. Like, that's so great. I hope that I can do something to help like make that happen.
Well, you are. We're here in conversation, and you're sharing a bit about what I do. And obviously that's my vision in broad terms. But apart from that, I want to just keep the bigger part of it is I want to preserve wisdom that's worked well for people in the past, and also preserve it for future generations and pass it on. Like, because there's a lot of noise in the world and there's lots of stuff that's happening. I want to actually be someone who can consolidate what's worked really well for humans in books and stories and what I do, and pass that on for the future generations. I want to create blueprints so the future generations, like my kids, have something they're like, okay, this is what it takes to just get ourselves ahead in life. This is the power we actually have, because people need to take back their power, because all these big organizations that are kind of dictating people's lives in the world, they'll continue to do that until people take back their power.
Yeah.
Like, people underestimate how powerful they are. People underestimate how much of a difference they can make.
Absolutely.
And you can look throughout history to see examples of people like, Mother Teresa or, Nelson Mandela. Like, they're one person, and then they have a vision, and then they rally people around them, and then together, collectively, they have a huge impact.
Absolutely. That's going to be us.
Yes, that's right. In our own unique way. Absolutely. That's it.
Absolutely.
I love it.
We are only one, but we are one.
That's exactly right.
That's so beautiful. So my last question for you, my friend, is who are you inspired by?
Oh, you.
Oh.
Yeah, you're very inspiring, I would say.
Thank you, Nash. I really appreciate that.
No, of course. So many people. Like, I'm inspired by every single one of my clients. I'm inspired by everyone I have conversations with. It's not one big person. It's every person on the planet. And I'm inspired by, when I worked in operating theatre, I had heard the first cry of over 200 babies being born. Like, the first cry. It's a beautiful sound. And every time, I remember I would just stop in the hall or wherever I was, and I'd just say gratitude, like, just share some gratitude, just to be there, like, hearing this life begin. It's quite an amazing thing.
That's amazing.
And so that inspired me. Like, I'm inspired by, everything. Like, there's nothing that doesn't inspire me, really. Like, I like to live that way.
It's a beautiful way to live.
Yeah,
it really
I get
is.
inspired by looking at nature. I like it. It's all amazing to me. It's all amazing. And that's actually one of the key things in my book, which I was talking about before, is helping people ground themselves, that you don't need some big pump up session. You don't need this stuff. Like, you can just go and be and look around in the world, like, sit in a cafe and watch the people.
Yeah.
Just look at people, and you'll see beautiful things happen. You will see smiles. You'll see people doing amazing things. One thing I learned working in the hospitals, I know I'm going a bit on a tangent here, but
it's okay.
is, the world is better than people make it out to be.
Oh my gosh, really, yes.
Because in hospitals, I would see miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle, like, being performed, like life-saving, life-changing things happening. I would see plenty of hardship and challenge, for sure. That's part of life. But for people to say the world's bad, the world's doomed, I don't believe that. Actually, I am very hopeful for the future. I believe in the good that actually exists. And you can't have light without dark. I get that. But society as a whole is very good at portraying and bringing, like, really emphasizing the darker sides, or the what's not going well, where we're falling short. But I know, because I would remember, I'd pick up the newspaper and you'd read about, like, a stabbing on the street, but they wouldn't say about the, half a dozen crazy surgeries that took place in the hospital, dozens, hundreds in some cases, that went well, that succeeded. They would just tell you about the one knife stabbing.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be an interesting flip if the news was, like, more focused on the positive things?
Yeah. And that's happening right now.
If they were going to be, like, the negative, they'd be like, so this happened, and this is how we're supporting the community, so we can, like, help before this becomes a problem and escalates to this part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we need to be very good at finding things that inspire us. I love that question, by the way. I love that question.
Thank you. Well, I think it's really important to remind people that that's just like what you said. There's so many things in life to be inspired by, and inspiration is such a beautiful light to be pulled towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So thank you so much for everything that you've shared with me and with the audience today, Nash. It was such a pleasure, as always, to get to chat with you. And I can't wait to come visit you and your beautiful wife and your children someday when the pandemic is over.
Absolutely.
Come visit you and all my other new friends in Australia. And I feel like, 6 months, maybe a whole year, I'll just be like, I'm just going to hang out in Australia, everybody.
Perfect. Come do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. You'll be more than welcome. No, thank you so much for your time and having me on. And like all the effort that goes into creating one of these, I understand. So good on you for stepping up and just shining your light. Like keep doing it. I appreciate you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you too, just in general. You're a good human. Glad to have you out in the world.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. Until next time.
See you guys.
Bye.